This is the first part of the notes for the interwar period, the time between the fires that we call World War I and World War II. Remember, at the end of World War I, we had the Treaty of Versailles that was signed, and one of the major points of the Treaty of Versailles is that they create the League of Nations from Wilson's 14 points. This is the first permanent international organization created by Europe. Remember, they had created that Holy Alliance after Napoleon and the Congress of Vienna, but it wasn't really a permanent one. And the goals of the League of Nations are to prevent war through collective security and disarmament. So all of the other countries are going to be helping to make sure that nobody starts a fight, and to settle disputes through negotiations. So that if a fight does start between two different countries, they're not going to be, they might stand up over the table and throw fists at each other, but they're not going to be shooting each other. And here you have a map of those that become members of the League of Nations. So the members are in dark blue, and then in light blue are the colonies of the members, and in orange are the unaffiliated states, and in gray are those that do not join the League of Nations. However, there are some problems with the League of Nations. The first problem is that they don't have any armed forces created by the League, and so they have to rely on all of the powers in Europe to enforce all of their decisions. And so if there's a problem between Russia and Germany, England would be asked to send troops to kind of negotiate the problem, but England doesn't want to send troops after the whole issue of World War I and how many people died. They also create the mandate system, where the former colonies that were become supervised by those allied powers. Remember, all of those colonies, these are the orange ones, are the mandates. So Iraq and Syria become split up between Great Britain and France. And so all of those German and Ottoman lands go to Great Britain and France, which makes Britain and France more powerful, and Germany not so happy about that. So the League of Nations is going to fall apart in the 1930s with the rise of the Axis powers, and the other big problem of the League that's not mentioned on this is that the United States never joins. And as the United States is kind of starting to become a superpower, they're not quite there yet, but they're getting there, with not joining the League, that's going to be another huge problem. Now, after the war, we also start to see some new ideas. Albert Einstein is going to offer ideas on space, time, energy, and matter. He is going to flee from Germany and head towards the United States, where he publishes his theory of relativity and helps with nuclear experiments towards the end of his time in the United States. Sigmund Freud is a philosopher and a psychologist who comes up with new theories on human behavior. He believes that much of human behavior is irrational, and if you want to know more about Freud, then definitely take Psych or AP Psych next year. These philosophers and writers are going to start to question accepted ideas about reason. And so we get this new idea called existentialism, where the new belief that people can make their own meaning out of ideas. We're also going to start to see in this period, remember this is the 1920s, so we start to see composers trying out jazz, such as Louis Armstrong, and all of those other great jazz musicians. And much of this will be gone over much more so in next year in U.S. history when you talk about the 1920s and the Roaring Twenties. But we just want to give you a brief overview here and a reminder. We're going to see new forms of art linked to the world of dreams. Dreams are kind of a focus of Freud, and connection to real life, which we call surrealism. So here's one painting related to surrealism, with looking at the effects of dreams and relating it to real life. And here is another painting. We also start to see technological advances are used after World War I to improve transportation and communication. We start to see telephones becoming much more widely available, replacing those telegraph lines. And the automobile, the Model T, becomes much more widely available. Ford starts to create it before World War I, but it was fairly expensive. And so after World War I, it starts to become much cheaper with that assembly line process, and we get more different models with the Model A. Becomes much fancier, and more people start to buy cars. We're going to see radio and movies. We had previously seen silent films, but we start to see what are called talkies provide an outlet for entertainment, and everybody wants to go see the talkies. We're also starting to see international air travel increase, as the Spirit of St. Louis is going to carry people across the ocean from the United States over to France. So this whole period was known as the Roaring 20s in the United States. We start to see flappers, we start to see prohibition, and speakeasies and all of those crazy things starting. But focusing in Europe, what happens? The countries that formed after World War I, all of these new little purple countries on the map, struggled to survive and remain democratic, or the democratic governments that had been set up for them. Remember how Czechoslovakia, Austria-Hungary, and part of Yugoslavia had all been part of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and nationalism is going to help break them up and make that a permanent breakup after World War I. Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and Finland had all been part of the Russian Empire, and so they are going to split apart and become part of the Soviet Union. Remember, it's no longer called Russia from 1919 until about 1991. It's called the Soviet Union because of the Russian Revolution, which is a whole nother notes video. And then, of course, we had the Ottoman Empire down here in what is now Turkey. They broke up after World War I with the mandate system. And so within these countries, we start to see coalition governments form, where several different political parties, remember a lot of countries in Europe have multiple political parties, not like the United States where we have 2 major ones and some smaller ones. They create alliances, and so let's say they have 10 different political parties, they may create an alliance out of 6 of them together, and they're going to decide to form this coalition government and work out agreements on how to govern the country best. Sometimes coalition governments are great, and sometimes they don't work out so well. After the World War I with France, we're going to see that they demand strict enforcement of the Treaty of Versailles. Remember that Germany had to repay in reparations all of those back to France, and especially to Great Britain, reparations for all of the damage that they had caused. So Germany owes about $33 billion, or 132 billion marks back then. And so in 1921, Germany makes their first payment. But then by 1922, they can't make the second payment. And when they can't make the second payment, France moves in and occupies what is known as the Ruhr Valley, which, if you can see my mouse on the screen, it's in this western part of Germany, right by the Rhine and light pink demilitarized zone. And that was a heavily industrial area of Germany. And so France is basically taking over the industries of Germany, so that way they can use the industries to make the payments for the reparations. Fun fact, maybe not so fun for Germany, but Germany finished paying off the reparations from World War I in, I believe, 2010. So it took them a long time, and part of it is because France was so strict about the enforcement and demanded the full second payment and not just a partial payment that Germany potentially could have made. So what happens is Germany sets up this what is called the Weimar Republic. Kaiser Wilhelm II, who had been in charge during World War I, abdicated, which means he left the throne, and they actually move away from the constitutional monarchy that they have, and they move into a form of government called a republic. So they form a national assembly, they write a new constitution, but they have numerous problems in the 1920s, leading to especially all of those economic problems that their economy has been destroyed by World War I, and they don't have a lot of men left because of deaths during World War I. So Germany is going to try and print more paper money in order to pay salaries, but we know that printing more money is not always the best solution, as that leads to a lot of inflation. This causes the German mark, what is their money, to become worthless, okay? So I'll show you a chart of this in a minute, but in 1914, there are 4.2 marks for $1 US. So if you go to an exchange place, you turn in $1 US, you get 4.2 marks back. By November 1st of 1923, 130 billion marks equals $1 US. By November 31st, 4.2 trillion marks equals $1 US. So here's a little graph to show you what's happening, okay? So we go from, $1 equaling 4 marks to $1 equaling about 100 and 200 marks, and then it's going to go all the way up into the trillions by November of 1923. Kind of another way to look at it, German marks needed to buy 1 ounce of gold. Gold is sometimes a standardized unit of economic value on the marketplace. And so you can see how that increases drastically through November 30th, 1923. And here's just another chart, another way of looking at it. So marks, which is right here, what it looks like, become essentially worthless. So this load of marks on this guy's cart probably wouldn't have bought a loaf of bread by the end of 1923. People started to use marks as wallpaper in their houses to try and help make the houses a little bit warmer. You know, every layer counts. Children would use blocks of marks as their playing toys. Okay, so these are actual like money, blocks of money that they are using. And it became actually at one point more efficient to just burn the marks than actually to go ahead and spend the marks on anything, because you could burn more marks and heat the house better than you could pay for firewood. So Germany's in a real cahoot. The Americans come to the rescue by creating what is called the Dawes Plan, and they're going to try and restructure the reparations payment so that Germany doesn't have to pay enough, and they help loan Germany money so that Germany can then pay the reparations to France, which then means that France can repay all of the loans from the United States during World War I. And then it's kind of like the money moves in a circle, but then everybody's happy. Doesn't make a lot of sense in your mind to just, pass money between your friends. But then because everybody's happy, crisis is avoided for at least 5 years. And we're going to stop there, and the next set of notes will be up shortly.